Hello and good morning. And today is the fourth day of ER, and it's the fourth day of May as well. We are now continuing and actually going to conclude the book called Full Devotion. We are holding now on page 66, chapter 12. Until this point, the Rebbe has been explaining the verse found in the 18th Torah portion. The 18th Torah portion is called Mishpatim, and it deals with many laws and rules. Towards the end of it, it talks about the Jews going into Israel. When the Jews will be in Israel and will follow God's will, God's commandments, the Torah says that Lotiye meshakela va'akara ba'artzecha. There will not be a woman who will be miscarrying or will be barren. So that means that the children will be taken care of. People will have the children when they want them, and they'll have children, and they'll have them healthy. After that, the verse continues, "Et mispar yamecha amale, I will fill the days of your life." That means that you will live, not just you'll have children, but you'll also live a filled life. And then it says that, before that it says you'll have food, then you'll have drink. In other words, you're going to be taken care of. You'll have sustenance, you'll have children, you'll have health, you'll live a long life. Can't ask for more. Those are the three great blessings that a person can expect. Now, when the Rebbe studied this verse, after a lengthy explanation about how the energy of God is introduced into this world, the Rebbe compared that to the energy of God that is introduced into the people, into human beings. We have energy called a soul that is within us. It's within ourselves and our personality, and that energy provides to us intelligence and thought process and the ability to speak, to share those thoughts to other people. In other words, for us to be inspired by our thoughts, for us to be inspired and to follow our words. So the way it works is, and this is how the Rebbe went in also at length, is that a person has to use wisdom. Wisdom is just a flash. You have an issue, a thought, a problem, and you say, "Ooh, got it." That's your wisdom, the flash. Then there is the understanding of that flash. That's expanding it to length, to breadth, to depth. That's called understanding. So you have wisdom and you have understanding. Those two are compared to male and female, because the male part is just a quick flash. The female part is to expand on that flash, to its length, to its breadth, to its depth. The next step after those two stages of intellectual inspiration is for the person to apply those thoughts, to apply the conclusion, the resolution to his or her characteristics. So if I thought to myself that this is a good cause to support, and we use that example, then my heart needs to be inspired to actually do it. It's not enough for me to intellectualize and say, "Oh, this is a good cause," and then go back to eating the dinner. Therefore, what am I going to do about it? So this application is called knowledge. Knowledge is I know something. I store it, and not just I store it, but I connect it. I connect it to my heart. Now when my heart is taken over, now how much am I going to give? How is it going to work? From which account? And then comes the actual giving, the action of giving, which is at the end of the characteristics, of the emotions of the person. So now that I've intellectually come to the conclusion that I got to give, now I have to inspire my heart to want to give, and how much to give, and where to give, and how to give. That all comes from the heart. So, in other words, the intellect, the wisdom, and the understanding give birth, produce a thought, a feeling, an emotion. They've given birth to the kindness. So if I'm just kind the way it is, all right. So if I have a feeling to be kind, I'll be kind. If I don't have a feeling to be kind, I won't be kind. But if it's intellectually understood and accepted, okay, then now the kindness is a offshoot of my intellect, and it'll last forever, because it'll always make sense to me that this is a good cause. So this is what the Rebbe was talking about by having a child, not being barren and not miscarrying. Being barren means a person just thinks and can't produce. You got the male and the female, or the wisdom and the understanding. There's no production. The heart is left heartless. And then you have the person who might think something through and then say, oh yeah, I'm very inspired. And I do need to give kindness, tzedakah to this cause. And I think I'm going to do it on Tuesday. And then Tuesday comes and they're not ready and then it's a miscarriage. It doesn't go through. So when God says, I'm going to give you the blessing that your children will have children and all of this, it's an eternal message because the message is about the thoughts process being able to inspire us to do what needs to be done or to feel the way we need to feel, a love to God or awe of God and so on, to be inspired to come on Sunday morning to class, not just to be inspired, but to actually do it and see through. So you've produced now your child. Well, these are all the good things in observance of Judaism as a result of our thoughts producing this child, producing a healthy production from our thoughts. This is where we're standing now. Chapter 12. We'll do it in English. In this light, we can further elucidate the verse, the number of your days I will fill. Remember that the verse had said, you will have children, but you'll live a long life. The number of your days I will fill. That means you'll live a long life, you'll live a full life. So in addition to the person's contemplation about the number of days allotted to him, previously, in a previous chapter, he spoke about when a person thinks about how many days is left in his life, and we made reference to someone's birthday coming up, and it's getting close, and who knows how long you have, and when your bracha once every 28 years. Anyway, you can check last week's. So we spoke about a person's thoughts that have to occupy one's mind when a person's thinking about producing. You're giving birth. You got to catch it before it's too late. So in addition to that, there's another idea to think about again, when you translate this verse into not just the practical side of blessing that God gives us, but also what it means in our personal service to God. I'll fill your days. What does that mean? The verse specifically states, I will fill, meaning God. Furthermore, this is stated in the first person. I, not God will. Not Moses says God will, but I will. To refer to the narrator of the Torah himself, the actual essence of the Ein Sof, the infinite level of God, blessed be He, who transcends Hishtalshalut, who transcends the regular, normal way of things. There's chain reaction of events to produce something, as mentioned earlier. So earlier he said that you have two levels of godliness. You've got godliness as it fills the world. It fills all the worlds, and everything gets its energy the way it is. So the cat gets its energy in a cat way, and the leaves get it in the leaves way, and the humans get it in their way. But then there's another level of the infinite level of God, which is not restricted to the energies of the cat or the leaf or whatever. It's transcendent. It's infinite. It comes to this world, but that we got to work for. You get your life. You get your soul. What you got to work for is the higher level, the upper level, which doesn't normally and naturally come to this world. It comes as a result of our service. It's above, that transcends the regular energies that are sent into this world. And he mentioned, we spoke about this at great length, the two different energies before. So this connection of I will fill, I means the essence of God, much higher level of God, not just a promise in a second person, as the Torah usually talks about, in a third party. And God spoke to Moses saying, if God is speaking to Moses and that's recorded, then it's not God who's writing it, it's not Moses who's writing it. It's a reference, somebody's writing and God spoke to Moses. Now, of course, we know it's God. But the Torah is written in a third person standard. But every once in a while it says, and I will do this. And I will be your king. And all of a sudden this comes up every once in a while. It comes up right over here. I will fill your days. There won't be any this and that and the other. And I will fill your days. I? Oh, that's a reference to the much higher level of God. That's the transcendent level. Now, well, how does that translate into our service to God? So he's going to say, sparkling days. Even when a person lacks in the number of days in which he serves God, that means there's days are missing. In other words, he had days in which he did not fulfill his mission. As we said so many times, you don't feel like you're in the mood. It just doesn't work. You try, you make your mind up, and you say you're going to, and you just don't. You just don't do it. You promise you're going to study something because you need to finish something, and you don't. Or you promise you're going to be at a certain place, and you're not. And you say this, I don't know. I had commitments, I didn't. I was lazy, I was tired, I wasn't in the mood. That does happen to people every once in a while. So even in a situation where a person did not fulfill his mission, or even days in which he did what he should not have done. Not only did he not fulfill the mission, not only didn't he fulfill the mission, he did the opposite of what that mission said. I'm going to keep kosher today. I'm not in the mood. So he chose not to do it. I'm going to give tzedakah today. I don't feel like it. I'm going to pray today. I don't want to. So you do things, and so instead of doing that, you do what you shouldn't do. So even in such situations where there are days that are missing, in other words, there are days that are not fulfilled, nevertheless, because the narrator of the Torah transcends hishtalshalut, he transcends the regular chain reaction of energy, how it comes into this world, a level at which there can be no defect. You're talking about the most perfect God of not how it sort of makes its way into this world, but it remains transcendent all the time. So it's godly, so it's perfect all the time. So because you're talking about a level that's above anything, so anything that we don't do, or we do what we shouldn't do, is not affected by this higher, upper level of God, who transcends the chain reaction. The defects in number of days allotted to him are filled. Even that is filled. And even more than what was allotted. All the days become full. All the days become like full days. Not only as full days, but also splendorous days that are me'idim, illuminating days. This explains the emphasis of the verse, the number, mispar, of your days. The word that is used for number is mispar. Mispar means number. We are right now in the days of counting the Omer, which is called Sephiras HaOmer. Sephiras is mispar. It's the number of the Omer, numbers. The word number is mispar. The word mispar has the same letters as sapphire, as I'm going to say now. Sapphire is a very bright and illuminating stone. Am I correct, ladies? Yeah. Your what? Birthstone. What does that mean?
Birthstone.
Born in September.
Me too. What? September. And Harvey too.
My birthday was in September.
What does that mean?
Sapphire.
Each month has a stone.
Oh, I was born in May. Emerald.
Green.
Darkish, murky.
Beautiful.
I'm on the end of May. What's June?
July, I'm a Ruby. I'm a Ruby.
I'm a Gemini.
Oh, Jim, I don't know
Which day is it?
Yeah.
Sparkle. Never got very
Anyway, so that sapphire is a very bright stone. So the Hebrew word for number, or mispar, is related to the word mesaprim, as in the verse, the heavens mesaprim. In the verse in Psalm number 19, we say this on Shabbos, the heavens tell, it says. The heavens mesaprim, the heavens tell, relate, declare, or the figuratively it's radiate, like shine. In other words, they shine and sparkle. See, page 68, the word mispar is also related to a sapphire stone. Even sapir, in Hebrew it's also called sapir, sapphire, related to the Hebrew word sapirut, meaning brilliance and luminosity. So when the Torah says, I will fill your days, God is saying, I will take even the negative side, I will take I will take even the negative parts of your life, the days that are not filled with necessarily good things, and asap mispar yamecha, I will make your days mispar, shiny, sparkly, radiant, even though we may have missed the opportunity to do it ourselves, because God comes with a transcendent level once we connect with Him through our thoughts, and we bring together the wisdom and the understanding, we inspire ourselves to get closer to God. God comes in, swoops in, and He says, you know what, whatever you did in the past, drop it, don't worry about it. I'm handling it from here, and I'm going to make your days shiny and illuminating. Now, the verse continues on after that and says, I will remove all sickness from you. Sickness, of course, nobody wants to know about. So we say over here, this is also the meaning of the verse, and I will remove illnesses or illness from your midst, which is written in the first person, i.e., in other words, the narrator of the Torah is speaking. Again, I will remove. It's the second time in this context where he uses the term me. I will take care of it. The illness regarding which the verse states, I will remove illness, what is that? It refers to the disease that remains in existence even after you serve the Lord your God and after He blesses your bread and your water, which are the previous verses over there. Even after we serve God and we do what we should do, and even after we get the blessings from God for our sustenance, for our food, your bread and your water refer to the written and oral parts of Torah, respectively. Bread and water. Now, if you look at footnote 125, the Torah provides sustenance to the soul, as do bread and water to the body. For the words of Torah unite the soul with God. When a person studies Torah, your soul is united with God, giving life to the soul from the source of life. So when we eat food, our bodies are connected to the physical world because we are ingesting physical material from the world. And therefore, our soul is connected to our body. Without that food, our soul wouldn't be able to stay in this body. A person would expire. Similarly, in a spiritual sense, sustenance for the soul is the study of Torah. And the body is connected to God through that. Just like the soul is connected to the physical world through food, the body is connected to the spiritual world through the study of Torah. So the soul has its bread and its water, which is the Torah. The oral Torah corresponds to water. For the mutability of water describes the oral law's varied form of interpretation. That means that the water continues to slide and to slip and from all different sides. It doesn't stop going to all different tributaries, and it keeps on moving. And that movement of water is similar to the oral Torah, which is filled with movement. As we were discussing yesterday, for those who managed to be here for Shabbos, we spoke about the chain of how the oral Torah began, and which time of which part of which part of from the creation of the world, in which century and which times, and what happened exactly, and how was it done, and how was it transcribed, and the Talmud, and all of that. So the oral Torah is filled with different types of I don't like to use the word interpretation. It's not really interpreting the Torah. It's expanding the Torah. It's extrapolating from the Torah. When the Torah says something, it might not mean what you think it means, because things are lost in translation. When it uses words that are not usually used, that is a sign of, hey, pay attention. Or when there's a letter missing, or when there's an added letter, or a big letter, or a small letter. The Torah is very, very, very precise and concise, because it has so much information. If it had too much information, you wouldn't be able to hold it, you wouldn't be able to read it, you wouldn't feel like you can get through it. So the Torah contains information by a change of a word, or even a change of a letter. We know we have to have 4 walls around the sukkah, because the Torah writes the word sukkot, which means the plural of sukkah, 4 times, but 2 of them are missing the plural vav, the oat of the sukkot, making it seem like it's written sukkat, which is a singular. Now, when you see that, when you read it you read it in the Bible, you translate it. It's Sukkot. It's plural all 4 times. But when you see the letters, you say, wait a minute, why are these 2 missing? And they come to teach all kinds of things. I mean, I can't get into this now, but the fundamental laws of Judaism are extrapolated from these type of weird things that are missing or that are added or that are different or changed. The context is very, very important, as well as the words and the letters. I'm sorry? In Hebrew, Raz is saying, you don't have letters that serve as vowels. You do have one letter that serves as a vowel, a vav. But generally speaking, you have vowels in addition to letters. Unlike English or other languages that have an E and an A and an I and O, U. But in Hebrew, they have no vowel letters necessarily. They have vowels. So you can read it with the vowels, and you can read it without the vowels. In the Torah itself, in the actual Torah that you read, there is no vowels. The vowels are added later. Traditional from oral Torah are the vowels. In other words, the written Torah is giving you an opportunity to read it either with the vowels or without the vowels. And without the vowels, meanings can change. Things are different. That's how Torah is extrapolated. And then there are different principles of the Torah. You can compare the first part to another part. You can compare words to word, and so on. There's so much that goes on in the Torah that is taught to us like that. So water is the oral Torah because it's all over the place. There are so many different ups and downs over there. There's so many teachings in the oral Torah, and then there are just discussions there. Rabbi, this one says that, Rabbi, that one says no. You can look at this way, look at that way. And by the time you finish, you're all over the place like water. Splashes and sprinkles all over the place. That's oral Torah is compared to water. Whereas the written law, like bread, is fixed and solid. You don't have any ups and downs in the written Torah. The way it is the way it is. That's how it is. You don't change it. You read the same words every single time. You look at the same letters every single time. It's not changed. Why are you shaking your head so much?
Because you're saying the word interpretation is not applicable to what you were saying.
No, I'm saying I don't prefer to use the word
But
interpretation.
see, to me, everything is interpreted. It's all like, this is missing, that's missing, and man is then interpreting what that means.
But that's why I don't like to use it, because people get the wrong impression. That is a wrong impression of what I just said. Why? Because not everything is interpreted. A lot of the stuff was given to Moses, and it's part of the oral law, not interpreted. For example, the Torah says in the Shema, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as portals between your eyes. Anybody care to explain what that means? A sign on your hand and portals between your eyes. It sounds like tefillin, doesn't it? Well, first of all, you don't put it on your hand. You put it over here. Between your eyes? What? You put it down here. You're putting it on over here. And what are they anyway? What's portals? And what should you bind as a sign on your hand? Where does it say all of this stuff?
It reminds you.
No, what remind you? This is the law. The law says bind them, these words, as a sign on your hand and as portals between your eyes. You can look it up. It's in the Shema.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, then let me ask you.
Oh, no. I'm asking you.
My interpretation is, you gotta start from here and go up.
Okay.
And maybe you need to come lower.
Okay.
Between
So
your- I don't think-
So that's your interpretation, which is incorrect. So therefore, I don't like to use the term interpretation, because 8 laws regarding these words were given to Moses on Sinai, came down to the Jewish people and said, when we say these words in the Shema, this is what they mean, because God just gave me 8 rules. Number 1, they have to be boxes. Number 2, created out of leather. Number 3, they have to be perfectly square. Number 4, they have to be black. Number 5, they have to be straps. Number 6, they have to start from here, not from here. Number 7, they have to be on your head. They cannot be any lower than where your hairline is. But they have to be between your eyes, on your head, between your eyes. 8 laws and more, much more than that were given to Moses. And none of these laws are even hinted in the Torah anyway. You can't interpret these laws because they're not there. They're not missing a word, they're not missing a letter, they're not found in the Torah. Sukkah, yeah, it's found in the Torah, but not this one. There are 8 rules that were part of our oral law that were not written, not in the Torah. No. They're written in the Talmud as part of the writing down oral Torah. At certain points it came to that. There is no argument about it. There is no discussions between the rabbis what to do. Once this law is law. There's no question why do we put on tefillin between rabbis. That's not a question. The law says put them on. So the question is, how do we do it? Now that the law says this is what you need to do, so whatever is in the law, it's not debated. That's not interpreted. It's here. The oral law is just as valid as the written law. That's what I'm trying to say. So a lot of the oral law is not interpretations. Interpretations come later. Now, for example, the Jewish people were in the desert and they were fulfilling the mitzvah of Sukkah. They came into Israel, they were fulfilling the mitzvah of Sukkah. 1,000 and something years ago, maybe even 1,500 years later, the sages came along and said, okay, we've been doing it this way for all these years, but are we sure we get this right? And they looked into the Torah and they found certain things that solidify what they were doing. But of course, when generations continue on, there are more questions that come up. Every single generation has its things. We have big things in this generation. What about the gender changing? And what about microwaves? And what about genetics? There's so many different questions that keep on coming up. We have much more than ever was in Judaism because of the changes in the world. But even without the changes in the world, within people understand things. People want to know. There's investigations. There's always questions. Everybody's inspired to ask. So there are a lot of things. But everything has to be in the Torah. Including genetics and including microwaves, all in the Torah. How do you get there? That's when you start. That's why you study a lot in the yeshivas and you do a lot of stuff. So it's not really interpretations; it's extrapolations. It's very different than simply okay. I'm reading a book. It's up to me to interpret it. It doesn't work that way. It really can't work that way. Religion has to be ritual. I was just reading a book from Freud yesterday. And he wrote one book about Judaism. He's a Jewish man. He only wrote one book about Judaism, and that was about the Haggadah and Passover and rituals. And his point was that rituals have to be a part of the religion, and they have to be set. Because if they're not, then the religion falls apart. Even Freud got that. Anyway, that's why it's not interpreted. If it's left for human interpretation, then I'll decide what to do on Shabbos. I'll decide what to do on Yom Kippur to have a Day of Atonement because it's my interpretation. The words say this. I can find whatever I want in the words. Somebody asked me on Friday, there's a book called The Bible Codes. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but that book shows if you look at the Bible and you count every 3rd letter or every 5th word or every 25th word, you work with a computer, you will find all kinds of predictions of anything that ever happened in this world, which makes the Torah. And it cannot happen with any other. They've tried with 500 other books. It didn't happen. Any other book, they could not do that. With the Torah, everything you wanted to ever happen is all hidden in the Torah by missing out. The idea is to miss out words. You can go backwards, you can go forwards, you can go to the sides. I'm not going to get into this, but there's a book called The Bible Codes. In the introduction, I read that book from cover to cover. In the introduction, the guy who writes the book, or the 2 people who write the book say, we have to be honest that we are totally not observant Jews. So I'm asking you, you wrote a book how the Torah must be divine. It must be God's message to this world. And you're telling me you don't even believe in the Torah? Because if you believed in it, then you would do it. At least something. So you're trying to inspire other people to see how valid the Torah is. But you who write the book don't feel that way. Because if it was valid, then you would do it. And that's the problem with people who look at the Torah. The Torah is there for everybody. Everybody can open it. Everybody can read it. Everybody thinks that they can interpret it. But they don't go through the channels. You see, they don't start with Moses and say, how did they interpret it in the days of Moses? Then in the days of the Talmud. Then in the days after the Talmud. And now that I'm in the bottom of this chain and I've received all the information and and how they made this information, how they got to this. They weren't dummies. They didn't wake up one morning and say, I want tefillin to be black. That's not what happened. Or I want the sukkah to have four walls, or 3 walls, or 20 walls. It never happens that way. There's all types of mystical analysis, and it's beautiful the way they arrive at certain things. And if one rabbi says, I arrived at this conclusion, and the other one didn't agree, he makes himself known. So you go through not just the bottom line, but you also go through how they arrived at it. And also throughout history, all these great leading rabbis from 1,500 years ago and on have written responsa. That means I ask a question, I write it down, I say, what should I do? I send it off to this rabbi. And he writes back, not this is what you should do. He writes back, well, if you look at the Torah, it says this. If you look at the Talmud, it says that. If you look at the previous, it says this. Based on all of this, this is why I concluded that you should do this and that and the other. Now, someone else can come along and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with the way he came to that conclusion. That's why you have codes of Jewish law that remove all of the discussions and the debates, and they get to the bottom line. You shall do this. You want to know where it says this? Oh, there's always references. Go back to the Talmud, and go back to this, and go back to that. You can see how that has arrived to the conclusion. Again, when somebody says whatever was interpreted in the past, like somebody told me, a conservative rabbi told me, the Talmudic rabbis were rabbis. I'm also a rabbi. I like what they say sometimes. Other times, I beg to differ. I said to him, if you're saying that, then you obviously have studied very little Talmud in your life. He says, oh, I'll agree to that. I said, well, then I have nothing more to say. What's the point? You don't know what you're talking about. You just jumped into the Torah without looking how our great, holy, and wise, brilliant sages derived and arrived at this kind of thing. They weren't dummies. They give us direction. Now you can say there's a rabbi on the other side of town, and I don't agree with how he used the previous ones, and I don't like the way he came to that conclusion. But it's not an interpretation per se. It's not like I can interpret everything. That's not what it is. The Torah isn't given for interpretation. That's not what the Torah is given in the sense of the word that we understand it. Oh, I can read it and I can say, oh, the tefillin start this way and go that way, which is a very smart thing to say, obviously. Well, maybe start in the hand. Maybe stay on the hand, only on the hand. Who knows? Good. But without the knowledge of how they got to arm to hand, you wouldn't be able to really throw your interpretation out there, because you're interpreting something, but before you interpret something, there's so many other people who came along and offered this information. First, you have to read what they said, why they said, how they said it, study it all the way. I'm not talking about you, but study it all. Study it thoroughly.
That's a very good interpretation.
Study it thoroughly and all the way. Then you can say, okay, now with all the information I have from the Talmud and from the sages and from this one, from that one, from all the different you know what? I see what they're saying now. I got it. I see the direction it's going. I've understood the rules that they followed. And now that I'm over here, I get it. Or you can say, I don't understand this. What are they going to do with this detail or that detail? So either it fits in or it doesn't fit in. These are what continue going on. That's what you study in yeshivas for years and years. And you go through all these type of things. That's what we do. Mrs. Lou.
There's another difference is that those rabbis had,
Who are those? Which
the rabbis who wrote the Talmud,
Oh, okay.
they had teachers who had teachers who had teachers, and there was an oral message coming all the way from Moses to them before they wrote it.
But you know what, that's reminding me what you're saying, and I really am taking everything in. It's like you start here with a sentence, by the time it gets down to the rabbi, it's changed.
No, but that's not what happened. Hold on, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. You're missing a very important part of the tradition. The heads were always transcribed. There were always notes. This wasn't just oral. It just wasn't published. The oral wasn't published, but it wasn't not written. That they had. They had the notes that were written down and passed only to the lead of the generation. That was there. What the interpretation or whatever you want to call it, how they extrapolated the Torah, that was all written down. Eventually, everything was placed into the Talmud. What was written and what was debated afterwards among the rabbis. But it wasn't just an oral pass along. There were also notes written. And that's everywhere. I mean, that information is not that I didn't make this up. This is written by the Rambam, who was one of those people in the chain, and so on and so forth. Each head would write things down, and there was stuff that was forgotten. There was stuff that was lost or forgotten in traveling from the desert to Israel. It's been said that it was forgotten. There was a prophet called Habakkuk. Habakkuk was one of the last prophets, and he had to research and look and find and reestablish things that were forgotten, with certain details of rules and laws that were forgotten. He went and found them and looked for them and researched them and then went around looking for them. You know, the Rebbe, for 42 years, spoke all the time. Had a lot of farbrengens and talks, farbrengens where he spoke a lot. And a lot of his words were transcribed. I would say 75% were published. What happened to the rest of them? Well, sometimes, around busy times, where there was a Shabbos, then all of a sudden Passover came, then Passover itself, he spoke a few times. So some of it became overwhelming. And so it just was never published. And then in the mid-1980s, we're not talking about thousands of years or hundreds of years. We're talking about in the mid-1980s, a few guys got together. I was part of that group. I said, let's go see what we can find. So we knocked on people's doors and we were calling people. Half the people who had the stuff, because they wrote little notes after the Shabbos. They wrote little things for themselves and put them away somewhere. I can't find it. People are asking me for stuff. I can't. It's like this. There are a few papers that are hidden who knows where. So you have to take apart your whole library, and I don't have the time for that. So people were searching. So we did uncover, I would say 10% more of that, and that was published, and that was the newest thing. Wow, there's so many more things that were not published, or some were only on tape, and we found tapes that were made in the 50s, which was unusual, or the 60s. And then, more recently, in the last 15 years, after Rebbe passed away, there's a group of people who did everything they could. And you know what? They still haven't found everything. Because there are people like me. Well, I don't have stuff that they're looking for. But there are people who are on the previous generation, my father's generation, for example, that they haven't found it yet, haven't gone through it yet. So there are talks from the Rebbe not from 100 years ago, from 25 years ago, from 35 years ago, that we don't even know. There are certain essays that he wrote on verses, like you have over here. You don't even know what the beginning of the essay was. There are 11 like that you don't even know what they are. Not just what they say. You don't even know on which verse he's talking about, which is also very, very unusual. So they managed to get, I would say they're up to about 90, in the 90s already %, which is they had to dig through many haystacks to find this. My point is that within 20, 30 years, things get lost, even if you write them down. And so sages have to come along. This wasn't a simple thing. The reason why they wrote all of this down was because they noticed that people were forgetting, or people didn't know, or the rest of the world didn't care. The simple folk, just don't bother me with this rabbi and that rabbi. Just tell me what I need to do, what I don't need to do. Things were forgotten. Things were not as known. And so they gave the information out. But now it gave us an opportunity to also think along with them, to hear from them. It's not an interpretation. It doesn't work. You have to study Talmud, which with God's help, as soon as we get a place, we will be establishing that class. And that's going to be fun.
I wrote this down. Is there a book that has, like you said, there's so much information that it's not in the Torah because we wouldn't be able to pick it up?
It's not in the written Torah. It's just in the oral Torah.
Oh, but where would you read the Talmud?
The Talmud is the best place. Without the Talmud, Judaism is not Jewish. It's period. Without the Talmud, not the Chumash, not the Torah. Without the Talmud, Judaism isn't Judaism. Everything we have is really in the Talmud, because that's where we learn about people's lives, not just about narrative of what you should or shouldn't do, how they did it, and the stories that come along with it. This is what gives us the life. The life force, the life blood of Judaism is the Talmud. It is nothing like the Talmud. Everything is based on the Talmud.
So it's a separate book? I never read the Talmud.
The Talmud is 63 volumes. If you study 2 pages, that means that.
We'll be dead by then, don't worry about it.
I need one of those short. No, honestly.
There is what we call daf yomi, a page a day, where they study every day another page. It takes 7.5 years to go through the 2,500 pages that there are. That's double pages. If you want to do 1 page a day, not the double, not a folio, but a single, that will take you 15 years just to go through it. Today, the entire business came out in English. So in the last 5 years, it was completed. So you can get, it's about 100 volumes. We're going to have some of it in our library. I'll put it there. The first few tractates or volumes of it will be there. I'm slowly building it. I haven't bought in the last few years, but I used to buy 2-3 times a year another volume to fill the to fill the bookcase.
Don't laugh at me, but
I don't
I'm
laugh.
being
I do not laugh.
But do they make it in an audio, like when you're in your car, joking aside?
There are people. You can get online. You can get classes in Yiddish and Hebrew and in English of the daf every day. It's about a half-hour class. You can just listen to it. The daf. Just Google daf.
DOF?
DAF. Daf. Yeah, when you Google daf, you'll find anything you want in any language.
My grandfather, I have memories of my grandfather just sitting there and reading all the time. And he would say to me, you need to do this. You know, he would give me Jewish books, you know, like the Haggadah and all that stuff. But it was like every time I would see him, he was sitting there and studying. It was so.
There's no end to studying. That's the thing. When you go through the Talmud, when you go through once, you want to go through it again and again and again and again. And then the commentaries on the side, the questions and the answers. The Talmud itself has so much to it. It's not just the Talmud. There's all the different the interpretations. Commentary. It's not interpretations. None of it is interpreted the way we would understand the conventional word of it. That's why I don't like to use that word interpretation. Because interpretation sounds like somebody decided something, interpreted it this way or that way. But it's not quite.
Is perception and interpretation the same?
No, not really. And it's not just perception. It's also based on what the other. You can't make a statement where someone else says the opposite without addressing that. So if I decided that if milk fell into meat and it should be this way, I better know what the other guy said. Because if I don't, they won't even look at me. They'll say, where are you coming from? Who are you? You look what this guy shows. When you learn to study to become a rabbi, you don't just learn the law. You also learn the commentaries on the side of the law that argue over what the law, how far does the law go. One will say, I think it goes this way. And we'll bring 25 different, not I think, he'll bring 25 different sources to back him. The other guy was
nowadays has become a lot more
watered down.
Feelings. I feel that way. If you think of a doctor gives his opinion, it's not what he feels. It's based on his knowledge and based on his experience. It's not based on what he feels. But if you want to interpret it becomes philosophy and it becomes emotion and feeling. But that's what's wrong about the word interpretation.
That's what bothers me with the word. The word is leads. Doctors every 2 or 3 years got to go through all the newest medicines and all the newest things. They got to attend conferences. In order for you to continue to get your license as a doctor, you've got to go every year or 2 or something to attend conferences. You got to spend certain hours to hear what they're doing now. And accountants have to do that. I learn with an accountant every single day on the phone. We study. And he said, today I'm at the conference. Like, it's 4 or 5 times a year, and sometimes for 2 or 3 days each time, to learn the nuances and the differences. So if you have to, an accountant to do that, to understand the whole Torah, God, Torah, it's a lifetime. And there's no stop. There's never, ever a stop. Okay.
One more question with the Talmud. Is that the one where they debate back and forth?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one.
When you learn, it's not really debates, it's more, it's hard to get into this now. When we study the Talmud, we'll go through that. But basically, it's a record of the discussions that were had between the greatest of sages. Instead of them writing it down among another, it's more written down how they talk to one another. One guy says, "You don't know what you're talking about," and go back home. Or they use terms like that. That's also in the Talmud.
Here's the Talmud, and there's 20.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful.
And that's one page.
That's one volume.
That's one volume.
There's 20 of these.
20 of these, and that's the big.
Did you put the cameras? Oh my
And
God.
it is customary in our, to give
That
a
is
set of Talmud to your son-in-law.
Give me something to do.
Yeah.
My father-in-law.
Wow, that's gorgeous.
Hold on a second. Open up the page so you can explain what the page is. So when you have this is the Vilna from 1900 or 18 something. Here is a typical page of Talmud.
Wow.
Here is the text of the Talmud. Rashi is always on the inside, and the Tosfos always on the outside. So you get Tosfos, Rashi's explanation. This is commentary. On all of these are commentary. Now, when the Talmud finishes, this one, by the way, is about kosher food, how to slaughter animals. This is about food. A lot of it is food here. This is 130 or so pages. The rest of the book, which is more than half of it, another few hundred pages, is all commentaries on that.
Wow.
From the greatest of the great. You're talking about from over 1,000 years ago.
But that's in Hebrew, right?
It's all in
And
Hebrew
now
and
they're
Aramaic.
having it in
Now it's in
English.
English, not the commentary. It's just the text. And
Rabbi
they'll-
Dean Steinfeld.
Steinfeld,
He translated, he wrote his own commentary, explanation, like in simple, words.
Thank you.
All right, back. So it's not interpretation. Back in here. So the oral Torah is like water. Written Torah is like bread. Both of them are essentials. Bread and water, essentials for the body. Bread and water, essentials for the soul. Written Torah, oral Torah. Okay, back to the text. Even at such a state, in other words, at the level of God's name, Havaya. Sorry. Well, a little bit further than that. We're at the little 125, right in the middle of the page. In the middle of the text of the page, where 125 footnote is. Alternatively, they refer to the Torah and mitzvot, bread and water, the Torah and mitzvot, regarding which the verse states, "He shall bless your bread and your water," that even the service of God through performing Torah and mitzvot are dependent upon the blessing that emanates from the name Havaya. Havaya means the great name of God, which is past, present, future, the creator, the everything, the transcendent level of godliness. Even that which we study, Torah and performance of mitzvot, also depend on the blessing of God. When God says, "I bless your bread and your water," he's referring to, "I bless your connection to Torah and to mitzvahs." Because, I'll be honest with you, it is not always easy. It's not always easy to daven. It's not always easy to eat matzah when you have to, and to drink the cups when you have to, and to put on the tefillin, and to sit in the sukkah when it's raining or cold or too hot. And it's not easy it's not necessarily is it always easy. You need a special blessing from God. Even at such a state, in other words, at the level of God's name, Havaya, the transcendent level of God, there is still a possibility for disease. That means a person could be in a bad mood, a person can be not well physically, and so on. There is therefore a need for, "and I will remove illness," specifically by way of the narrative of the Torah. In other words, the atzmut, the essence of God, says, once you connect to me, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to take care of you. And I will enable you to be part of it, of the observance of Torah and mitzvot as well. But it's a struggle sometimes because we got to fight our way through it. And then without God, as the Talmud says, without God's help, nobody would ever be able to serve God. You need more money, you need more resources, you need more strength, you need more energy, you need more guts, and you want to walk around and you're going to have these tzitzis coming and you're a target, and so on and so forth. Root of all disease. The illness that the verse refers to is unqualified illness. That means without specific description. It doesn't say you're going to have a cold, I'm going to remove the cold, I'm going to remove your limbs hurting, muscles hurting. It's unqualified. It refers to the root of all illness. That means God doesn't remove a specific illness, but the fact that people can get sick. The concept of self-consciousness that is a result of the sin of the tree of knowledge. That means that we know there's a good and we know there's evil. Tree of knowledge. What is that? So page 70. Before the sin, there were no feelings of self-consciousness. That means nobody could have thought, Adam and Eve had no idea, no way of thinking that this could be good and this could be not good. There was no conscious of that. Like an animal. There's no good or bad in an animal. The animal just does what it needs to do. It's not thinking. When the raccoon goes to your garbage pail, all it knows is it's got to hunt for food and it's found some food. It's not thinking it's messing up your garbage and it's making a noise and it's making this and it's causing that. They don't know that. They're just doing what is natural. So there's no good or evil. They don't have a conscience. When a sick bird, a little bird in a nest, is sick and the other bird is healthy, that healthy bird is going to peck it until it dies. Not because it's evil, not because it's bad, because that's what birds do. That's how God created them. Yeah, it's horrifying to us to see, a lion tearing into a deer like that, and blood on all over the place. But they do it not because they're evil. They do it because that's what that's what they are programmed to do. So before the sin of the tree of knowledge, that's how humans were. Before the sin, there were no feelings of self-consciousness. As the verse states, and they were both unclothed, man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Today, you wouldn't find a person walking naked unless there's many screws missing in his head. But over there, they weren't even ashamed. They didn't even realize it would be. You're not ashamed if you see a dog walking naked in the street. If it had something on it, then you would say, "What's going on here?" Huh?
What you just say?
Yeah. The sin introduced self-consciousness. As the verse states, and the woman saw that the tree was good for food. She saw something. Now she realized she was able to understand something. This is why, even after you serve the Lord your God and he blesses your bread and your water, there could still be, and there still is, illness. Spiritual illness we're talking. The sin of the tree of knowledge had an effect on everyone, even the righteous, and even the completely righteous. As our sages state, 4 died through the serpent's machination. 4 died through the serpent. There were 4 people that the Talmud reveals had never sinned in their lives. So why would they die? They didn't die because of sin. They died because the serpent brought death into this world. Because everybody dies after the sin of knowledge. That's why they died. One of them was Benjamin, the son of Jacob. The other one was Yishai, the father of David. Anyway, 4 great sages. If you look at 131, here, this was said regarding Benjamin, the son of Jacob, Amram, the father of Moses, Jesse or Yishai, the father of David, and Kilob, the son of David. The purpose of death is to remove impure or evil aspects of the person that are not eternal, that only the soul survives. So something that's not like that doesn't survive. The aforementioned righteous individuals were in their own right perfect and not deserving of death. Only because the sin of the tree of knowledge brought about by the serpent's evil machinations did evil and self-consciousness become inborn into humankind and create the necessity for even the perfectly righteous to undergo death. Now is not the time for this whole discussion, but the bottom line is that you can see that the tree of knowledge brought into this world a consciousness. A consciousness of what? Of good, and also a consciousness of evil. If you're going to have good, you have to have what's opposite of good. And by the knowledge of evil, it introduces evil. Knowing what you shouldn't do means that there are things that you know that you shouldn't have known if there was no sin of the tree of knowledge. Like the animal doesn't know of any different. You can't explain to a lion, don't kill. Even if a lion's been in a zoo for 15 years and something falls in there, that lion's going for the natural instinct. This refers to the greatest and most righteous man who died only because of sin of the tree of knowledge. Okay. Hence, even as the completely righteous are subject to self-consciousness, as is known, even a completely righteous person who serves God out of awe and love and delight, that means his whole life, his greatest pleasure is to serve God. He is not completely selfless, but remains a distinct entity who is in awe of God and loves him. he's not connected to God. He's got to eat, he's got to sleep, he's got to do things in this world that are personal. There's no way you can get away from that. There is an entity who loves. There's someone there who's doing things for himself as well. Even when he eats, though, he eats with the focus that he's going to. Even when he sleeps with the focus that he's going to serve God. But the bottom line, he's doing that. So, as connected as he is to God, he's still not fully connected because he's an entity on his own. He does not attain the level of cleaving to God, which was the level of his soul before it descended to the world below. He's not connected the way he was before because he's got a body now. The body needs attention. Certainly, and to an even greater degree, Beinanim, which literally means average people, and those of an even lower caliber, or the wicked, are self-conscious. That means they're not connected to God even as much as you can be connected in this world. They're not in that as well. A person cannot heal the disease of self-consciousness of his own, the disease of knowing evil, and therefore sometimes being curious, sometimes being very curious about evil. What does this taste like? It's not kosher, I know, but I need to taste it. But only through eliciting the highest degree of godliness can a person really get rid of this consciousness. Regarding this, the verse specifically states, "And I will remove," in the first person, referring to the quintessence of the infinite, blessed be He, as mentioned earlier. In the final chapter, everything mentioned above will also become manifest in the physical. There will be abundant livelihood, concerning which the verse states, "And He will bless your bread and your water." There will be health, concerning which the verse states, "And I will remove illness from your midst, and furthermore the number of your days I will fill." And there will be children, concerning which the verse states, "None shall miscarry or be barren in your land." This is all in a. It's good to understand it on a deeper mystical level, but practically speaking, we need health and we need sustenance and we need our children to exist and to live and to be sustained as well. All of this is in preparation for entering the land of Israel, regarding which the subsequent verses in the Torah speak. So shall it be for us speedily in our days, with the coming of the righteous Mashiach.
Amen.
And so the book comes to a close, but learning never ends.